Okay, we are opening in less than a minute. Hope everybody is ready. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Paddles and Pines. This is day 5 of our big adventure. We are so glad you are here. You get a chance, drop in the chat where you are joining us from. We are so excited to see some people from, let's see, we've got Wyoming in the house, we have Tennessee in the house, North Carolina as always. We've got, oh, I see Minnesota and Alabama joining us as well. Thank you all for being here. We are so excited for this 5th and final edition of Paddles and Pines. Dr. Drizzle has some great things lined up for us today. And I think we are ready to go.
Welcome to Paddles and Pines, powered by Expeditions in Education and sponsored by Friends of the Boundary Waters. This is a special series of 5 live streams all about water, the lakes, rivers, and wetlands that make the Boundary Waters such a magical place. Together, we'll explore how people travel by canoe, how animals live in watery homes, and why clean water is so important for all of us. Each event will take us on a new adventure, helping us discover cool science, amazing stories, and ways we can care for this wild and wonderful place. Because when we learn to love the Boundary Waters, we also learn how to protect it for today, tomorrow, and the future. So grab your paddle, bring your curiosity, and let's go.
Hey everyone, this is Dr. Drizzle, and welcome to day 5 of Paddles and Pines. Now, I am dressed for the weather I had projected. This weather did not happen, so we do not have snow today, but I'm going to try to go through the entire event with my beautiful hat on. Before we start, I do want to give you a little idea of what it does look like here when it is snowing. So for this next minute, I want you to think about what you notice, what you wonder, and what it reminds you of. Here we go.
Welcome to Grand Portage. Hey, I made it. Yeah. Go take care of your dogs. We'll take care of this stuff. I don't think they're going to pull it out. Good job, boy. Good job.
So for the past 2 weeks, we have been spending our time here in the Boundary Waters. This project is a collaboration between Expeditions in Education and fully sponsored by the Friends of the Boundary Water. So on live stream 1, we talked about water as trail. We worked with birch bark canoes. In live stream number 2, we were at the North American Bear Center and the International Wolf Center. So we got to hang out with animals and talk about water as habitat. On live stream 3, we were at Sawbill Campground and we got to actually set up our tents and learn about water as home. And then just a few days ago, we were at McDougal Lake where we learned all about fire ecology and how fire can heal and hurt. Today, we are excited to be here at the Doodle Dog Kennel with Mary Manning, who is a musher and also the co-owner of this kennel, and we're going to talk to her in just a few minutes. But we're also excited to be here with our friends Sarah and Rachel from Friends of the Boundary Waters. So we're going to start off with them and learn a little bit more about what the boundary water is like in winter. Let's talk about that.
Great question, Daisha. Yeah, so it's super interesting because the ecosystem up here does shift a lot between the seasons. And in the summertime, water is readily accessible. You can get it right from out of the lake. And in the winter, it all freezes over. So accessing water can be a little more complicated. But if you have a hatchet or an ice axe or something of that, then you can get into the water and get some water for yourself. We also have seen the winters up here can be really, really cold, or they can be a little bit warmer. We've seen more inconsistent winters in recent years, but there are some recorded temperatures in northern Minnesota that are colder than Antarctica, so it really does get pretty cold up here. In the wintertime, folks will still get out and explore the boundary waters, but just in different ways. They'll often dog sled, cross-country ski. There's actually a cool period of time when the ice freezes, but there's no snow where people can go ice skating out in the boundary waters. So lots of cool activities while you get out there in the winter.
Well, I'm going to channel that below zero temperature and
Good
keep
plan.
my hat on for just a little bit. But this ice, this snow brings challenges. What are some of the challenges to travel here?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of things that can make winter travel really challenging. One thing we're going to spend a lot of time talking about is staying warm. As Rachel mentioned, it can get really cold, so we're going to dive into some of the gear that's needed, things like that. And then, like any season, there can be fluctuating, warmer days or colder days, and that also brings different types of snow. Sometimes it even rains in the winter. Again, that kind of reflects how the climate has changed. That didn't really used to be a thing in northern Minnesota in the main winter season. But as you have, sometimes warmer temperatures when snow falls, sometimes these colder times, there are actually layers that happen in the snow. It's all just not one blanket of the same type. So sometimes there can be the warmer layers are trapped underneath. And there can be kind of water underneath snow, which is called slush. And so that can be a huge thing that presents when you're walking around and you think you're on snow, and then all of a sudden your foot is down below wet, and people can get really freaked out and think that they're going through the ice, but actually it's just going to that layer of slush down below. And then if it's really cold, once your foot's out of that and you're walking around, that slush can actually freeze onto your boot. I know that's happened to me. And then you're walking around with like what feels like rocks on your shoes because it's frozen down there. So yeah, a lot of challenges, but we're going to talk about ways that we as people and also the animals adapt, especially for staying warm.
Well, we know the star of our show today are going to be the sled dogs, right? So let's go ahead and start with a question. What are some strategies that animals may use to stay warm in the winter?
Yeah, great question. So there are a lot of strategies. One way that I like to think about it is the same way that, prey animals can keep away from their predators is the fight, flight, or freeze techniques. And so kind of thinking about those three strategies, if you think about the flight, so fleeing away from your predators, they're animals that migrate. So there are birds that fly away, go to warmer places in the wintertime. That's a great strategy, just leave. There are also animals that hunker down. So that's kind of that freezing. And in the Bayer Center presentation, you learned about animals that hibernate, also animals that do a more temporary version of hibernation called torpor. So our squirrels will do that, hummingbirds, some bats, mice, things like that. So that technique, is slowing down the metabolism, the heart rate, using energy stores. And for torpor, it's like a deep sleep that can happen on a more temporary basis. And then kind of the last big category is that fighting. So that's animals that I think of that stay put in the winter, but they need to do some changes to their physical body and their behaviors in order to stay warm enough. So wolves, which is a lot like our sled dogs here, they'll do things like, you know, curling up, wrapping their tail around their face to stay warm at night. And then they also have a thick undercoat that they grow to stay warm. And so there are a lot of animals that have guard hairs or longer hairs that protect against rain and snow, and then underneath an insulating layer. And I have an example from the human world. So, you know, we as people might wear kind of a warmer, thicker coat underneath, and then on the outside wear a rain jacket. So that's the same thing that things like wolves, beavers, sled dogs do. And then if you think about other animals like fox have really thick pads that when they're hunting, like creatures that like to hide in the snow, they can use that to stay warm. So yeah, there's a ton of strategies that animals use. And yeah, anything you want to add?
No, that was great.
That's wonderful. And we know these animals are smart and they have these ways to stay warm. So let's talk about some more animals, humans, and talk about ways that they stay safe, especially the ones that are camping during the winter time.
Yep, great question. Well, I'm going to bring you over here quick to show you a couple different pieces. But the first thing I'll start with is that most of the time you think about winter camping and you think you're really worried about being cold, but a lot of the time in the winter you just have to manage your sweat. That is a key thing, because if you sweat, your layers get wet, and then when it cools off or you stop moving, you've got to deal with wet layers. So a lot of the work in winter is trying to maintain a regulation of temperature. So one cool way we've shown that on trips is actually by using a little color chart, because it can be really hard to say I'm too hot or I'm too cold. So this way you can say, I think I'm this second yellow color, and then we know it's time to take off a layer. Or I think I'm getting down to kind of this dark blue, then we know it's time to do some warming up. And a couple ways we manage some of that, we've got some pretty bulky winter gear, like these gloves you probably would never need to use going to the grocery store, but in the winter, if you've got a big day and it's really windy, these are going to be really warm and protective. Same thing with some of these boots that you can see. These are pretty excessive and maybe not the most fashionable, but keep your feet very warm, so that's pretty awesome. Here's another example of some boots from this area too. Mucklucks are connected to indigenous history, and these are boots that still get made in Ely, Minnesota, and are really effective at keeping feet warm. And then one of the last things I'll share with you all is just that in general, when you're trying to manage warmth and cold, when you're out camping like this, you do need to think about the different layering principles and how you manage what you put on top of each other. So even when you're sleeping, you often sleep with 2 sleeping bags. And the inner sleeping bag is a really warm down layer, and then the outer sleeping bag is a synthetic layer. And actually what can happen is at night is you might sweat some when you're sleeping, and the sweat will go through your down layer and get trapped in your synthetic layer. And synthetic is way easier to dry than down. So we're really cautious about what materials we're using in the winter so that we can be as safe and dry and warm as possible. The very last thing I'll say is that one of the biggest parts of winter camping or being outside as humans that we have adapted to is movement. So the amount of times I've been on a winter camping trip and I see someone moving or just starting to shiver, the answer is almost always do something weird, move your body, do a dance. You just got to move yourself. And as soon as you get that blood flowing again, you often feel a ton better.
That is lovely. And I love that there are available things for us. Now, our kids that are watching from Florida right now are probably just having the most horrible time thinking about all those layers that are on top of them. But let's come on back over here for a moment. I want to talk about one more question. We know that travel here can be dog sledding. So how does that look in this landscape?
Yeah, so dog sledding has been used for a very, very long time here in northern Minnesota and other parts of the world as well that have cold winters. And Mary is going to share a little bit more about that. And, you know, the first people to dog sled were indigenous people, Native Americans. And dog sledding has really been used for utility for a long time. One thing that I always think is so cool is that, you know, even though snowmobiles are around and those are a great invention, there are temperatures where sometimes the snowmobile is too cold to operate and work, but yet the sled dogs are able to do it because they have those adaptations. So that's super exciting. And then also in the Boundary Waters, we've talked about, you know, there's no roads. there are actually no snowmobiles allowed in the Boundary Waters. So if someone does want to move around and transport goods or go winter camping or things like that, the dog sledding is actually a great way to get around. And as we said, it's been around for a long time, and Mary's going to share a little bit more about some of that history.
Well, I bet you're wondering why these dogs are so quiet right now. As part of our talent for today's live stream, they did have to sign contracts. So they will be coming alive a little bit and giving us some of their beautiful songs. But for right now, we're okay with them being quiet so that we can meet Musher Mary Manning, which now I'm going to start calling you M cubed, because that just makes a cubed, mushing Mary Manning. Don't mess with a math teacher here. I know my math. Yeah, so we're so thrilled that you're here, and you have spent countless days on trails, and actually about 28 years. So tell us a little bit about your experience as a musher, and then we'll start talking about all of this.
Okay. I started running dogs about 28 years ago. Started working with a friend, just got a couple dogs, and then was training with someone to try to learn the ropes and decide, is this something I really want to do? And I fell in love with the sport. I fell in love with the dogs, and started racing, and then started camping with friends. Did a lot of Boundary Waters camping for a number of years, every March, which now gets a little trickier to hold on to those March race or runs, because it's just the weather is changing. As we know, the climate shifts, and it becomes a more difficult thing. Our season tends to shrink over the 28 years. What I could do 28 years ago, that season is short, but I still enjoy it and I really love it. So you get a dog, and then you get a couple more dogs, and then you get 4 or 5 more, and it just blows up. So it's the math doesn't really work. But now we have about 51 dogs here, including about 42 dogs that are actually working dogs, and then I've got about 8 dogs that are retirees, and most of my retirees either have a little home spot for them to hang out, or they get adopted out. I've got a couple dogs in my house that are retired, so they kind of live the lush life, so it's a good thing for them.
So they do live the lush life. You take very good care of them.
Yes.
So basically, we're watching or showing this to hundreds of kids right now, and educators. So I'm going to consider the educators right now are the mushers.
Okay.
And all these kids, they, try to provide great experiences for. They teach them, they train them, they make sure that they're safe and they're happy and they're fed.
Yes.
These are 4-legged kids, though, with boundless energy. And since we just met about 24 hours ago in person, you do not stop. You are constantly taking care of the needs of these dogs. Can you talk just a moment about the feeding and how many times you're out here and hugging and petting and watering? And you made me exhausted yesterday, and I didn't help you. I just sat in a chair and watched in admiration. But tell us a little bit about that.
Well, their job is to pull a sled, and they love their job. They don't care what they're pulling. In the fall, they pull a 4-wheeler. Sometimes they pull a snowmobile if we can't safely stop a sled. They'll pull a sled in the winter. They love their job. That is what they are bred for. That is the best time of their lives, is when we are hooking up and running, and it's mass chaos and craziness to start, and then once we get going, it's just quiet and beautiful. So as much as I want them to do their job, my responsibility is to take care of them so that they can do their job and we can have a good time together. So my job is making sure that they have everything they need to be safe and to go do those runs and come home safely and come home happy. Might not be an easy run, but they need to know that at the end of the day, we're going to be successful. They're going to have a good time, and they're going to come home. So that means in the morning I'm getting up, they're getting some water or a snack in the morning every morning. I can check everybody, scoop, because of course what goes in comes out. So I have to go through and make sure that I clean up after them, make sure in the summertime, in the fall, and the spring, everyone has water. So that's part of my morning circuit, is making sure everybody's got water, that their houses look good, that they've got straw and adequate bedding, that their chains, where they're at, their personal space. Every dog has a little space, a little circle where they've got a chain and a house where they've got some shade and some water. Every dog, just like a person, wants to have their own space, their own room, so that they feel comfortable. If they want to, relax and get away from everybody, they can go under a house or go inside their house and just kind of relax and have their own space. So making sure that they are happy and that they have adequate space and creature comforts here in the yard is really important. Checking toenails and feet and making sure that everybody is well cared for that way, especially once we start training. So that's part of my morning routine, is just going out and making sure everybody's good. In the fall and in the winter, we'll run, so they'll get some water in the morning. I hook up a team of dogs, which can be anywhere from 6 to, well, as many as 22 dogs at one time. I think we showed the picture earlier of 2 strings at a time. That's the most dogs I've ever run at one time. It's a little crazy, but once they've run some and they're kind of a little more relaxed about things and a little less excited, it works out really well. So we run, we come back, they get a snack, they get some water, they get a little check over again, make sure they're good. And I may or may not run another team, but just getting some training and getting some practice and getting some exercise and giving them the opportunity to do what they actually just love and live for. And then in the evening, once they've cooled down and they're rested up a little bit, then it's feeding time. And every morning they get a mix of water and some kind of meat, usually beef or turkey. And in the evenings they get a high quality kibble, a very high fat, high protein kibble that they're eating. And then they also get either beef or turkey. Dogs who are skinny, we supplement with beaver snacks, because beaver is a very high fat food and it's got a lot of nutrients for the dogs and they can metabolize it really well. So they get that as a snack a lot of times. Sometimes when we come back from a long run, they'll get some kind of snack like that. If it's really warm and we're worried about hydration, we'll snack with fish, which has a lot of water in it. So things that they can metabolize and utilize, because water is key for them to continue to do what they've always done. Historically, sled dogs have been bred to metabolize fat really well. So back in, thousands of years, those dogs didn't need to be watered because they would get their food and they would get their water from that food. These dogs can do that to a certain degree, but once we start adding in kibble, which is a processed food, it's potential water is kind of a way to think of the foods that they're eating, but they do need supplemental water as well as just the water that they can derive from their food. So that's kind of my day with them. And days on the trail in the Boundary Waters are basically the same sort of a thing, really.
I love that. I like that you're making sure, just like a mom or a dad or a grandparent, that your children, your dogs are taken care of. What makes dog sledding in the Boundary Waters different from other places?
Well, I think the idea that we are going someplace that is less accessible. When you think about travel in the Boundary Waters in the wilderness or in the wintertime, it's by dog sled, which is beautiful and amazing, by skiing, which I'm not really a great skier. I'm okay at it. It's slow. You have to haul all your stuff. And for some people that's great, but I'm a little lazy for that. Or not maybe in as great a shape. Or you can snowshoe, which I love to snowshoe, and I've done lots of backpacking snowshoeing trips, but it's not the same as having a bunch of your best friends with you. And for me, being able to go into the Boundary Waters where it's quiet, it's pristine, there's no snowmobiles, there's no distractions, and taking my best friends with me and enjoying that time together and just watching the joy of the dogs running across the lakes, going through the portages. Sometimes those portages are much nicer than others. Sometimes we've got to really struggle to get through the woods. Sometimes we're going in places where you wouldn't normally walk or portage in the summertime, because you can go across a swamp in the wintertime that maybe no one's ever been across, because it's the best route to get to where you're going. So sometimes you see things that probably maybe no one else has seen, but it's just amazing, and the dogs have so much fun. And then you find a track trail, and that's pretty amazing to see all the other visitors that aren't human that are out there and see what's, the wolf tracks. We followed wolf tracks for miles in the Boundary Waters, and it's just a neat connection to that environment that you just don't get anywhere else in the woods. The woods are wonderful outside the Boundary Waters, but it's a unique difference, and it really makes a very heartfelt and enjoyable time. I think it's amazing.
Well, I think you just answered the question about what's so special about this place in winter. I know the kids are excited.
Yeah.
to learn more about the dogs and how they're outfitted. Now, kids, this is going to be that moment when we start to move and bring a dog out here for you to see that we may have a lot of dogs barking, but that is just part of the beauty of today's live stream, that we have humans and we also have our dogs that are going to speak to us. On at our where were we? International Bear Center or Wolf Center, we had these animals, but the little gator, garter snake didn't talk very much, and Tuck the turtle didn't talk very much. So let's see what happens when us three walk behind this rope and you start talking about the sleds.
Okay. Do you want me to get Pete now, or do you want me to go through this stuff first?
Let's do this, and then
Okay.
we'll grab Pete.
Okay. So we'll start at the front of the sled here, the front of the line. So when you're running a team of dogs, every dog is attached to what's called a gang line, and that's the center line. And the front, we've got 2 lines there, and those will be where the dogs that we refer to as the lead dogs. So those are, you want smart dogs, but not too smart. Yes, because you want them to listen to you. You don't want them to go where they want to go necessarily. So that's where I have 2
We call
dogs
them
there.
sarcastic children sometimes.
There you go, exactly. The other thing that's a little tricky is those 2 dogs can kind of move around away from each other a little bit. You get back into the rest of the team, and we're just showing you 4 dogs because it's a little simpler. This is the distance apart that those dogs are going to be. So each dog is clipped to a collar on that line. So for however far we're running, that's as far apart as those dogs are going to be. So they really need to be able to get along well and be friendly with their neighbors. And that's important for me, that they all are working, doing their job, and having a good time, so that they aren't tempted to get into trouble of various kinds. Every dog then is wearing a harness, and every harness is clipped to a line that attaches to this main line, and that's where all the pulling comes from. And there's 2 different ways of thinking about pulling. Some people say that dogs are pulling a sled because they're attached at the back. To be truthful, dogs are pushing a sled because they're wearing a harness and they're pushing into that harness and they're going forward. So really they're pushing a sled, but it's a kind of a little mind twist to think about it that way. So there's that. So that sled, or that gang line, is attached by a carabiner or 2 to the sled, and then there's some ropes on the sled that transfer all of that power to this sled. And then everything that I need, or a musher needs, for whatever trip they're doing, is going to be inside this sled. So all of the equipment that Rachel and Sarah just showed you, all of that sleeping gear, that personal gear, all of that goes in here as well to be transported. So I've got my stuff, my personal stuff is all in a bag, and I carry all of that stuff. And I know it's winter and it's frozen, but something to think about is that whole slush idea. And I always pack all of my gear in plastic bags because it just makes sense. You're in a water environment, and even though it's frozen water, sometimes it's not. So having everything in plastic is really crucial. So I've got all of my personal gear in here, and then really the majority of stuff is stuff to take care of the dog. So I might have a tent in here depending on how long I'm going to be out and where I'm going to go. Sometimes I'll just sleep in the sled bag. It's perfectly comfortable, and dogs really like to snuggle in there too if you've got an extra one. But then everything else is for the dogs. So to keep the dogs warm, they do have, like Sarah said, they have an undercoat that's very warm, an insulating layer, and then they have a shell layer of guard hairs. Sometimes, depending on the conditions or the traveling, they might get a coat. It's just a little insulated jacket that goes over the top, and if it's particularly windy for the boys, there's a little cover to keep them from having any injuries, and that's really important with young male dogs. If it's really sunny, we might have white. These are just a lightweight shell just to help keep the sun off on a day like today where the sun is really beating down on a black dog. That can be really difficult for them to maintain and moderate their temperature. Again, just like people, dogs need to stay comfortably cool. Is kind of the way I usually think about winter travel. Is you're not too warm, you're not too hot, you're not too cold, you're just comfortably cool, because if you're warm, you're probably going to start sweating.
May
and
I
that can be,
add something
absolutely.
here?
Sure.
So you take dogs out, you take guide trips out with mushers, and you had a little color packet here. The top one was Cajun shrimp. I'm going to tell you now that I am now
are
a
a
Cajun
Cajun
shrimp.
Cajun shrimp?
So this has to come off. So I do not, I'm taking care of myself,
Yep, good
noticing that I was way too hot. So now I'm not a Cajun shrimp anymore.
Perfect.
So now you're venting, and that's good.
Yes,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
venting. It's
excellent.
much better.
That's excellent. Well, and thinking of venting, so a lot of people have seen dog booties, and we use dog booties some. We don't use them as much in Boundary Waters travel, but sometimes they are important. And these are just little bags, and they are, a lot of the equipment that we use is based on historically used equipment. Nothing really has changed drastically. The materials, some of them have changed. You know, now instead of having leather boots, we have, you know, nylon boots. But these go on to help protect dogs' paws depending on what we're running through. But if it's a really warm day, these aren't really good because then that doesn't allow the dogs to do like you did and vent a little bit. So those are things that we have, and we just have to really watch to see what do the dogs need. Are these going to help or are they going to hurt? So that's something that we carry. And then again, if it's really windy and really cold, male dogs in particular can have problems with frostbite. You wouldn't think frostbite, but on a male dog, on his, I usually refer to it as his undercarriage, you don't want them to freeze anything, so we carry these are actually made out of little foxtails, and that's a pretty standard thing for folks to carry. And then I've got a food cooler, got my dipper for food. I always carry a saw and an axe because I've heard of way too many people who've hurt themselves chopping through things like firewood that they shouldn't, and really you're not cutting big stuff. Dog food is prepared in a cooker, so we just put alcohol in here, little alcohol in the bottom, like a can of heat, if you're familiar with that, to keep your car's engine good. That goes in there, and we heat water in that, so we have to chop through the ice to get water to melt for people water and for dog water, or we pack snow. And melting snow takes a long time. If the snow is very wet, it can go pretty quickly. But if the snow is really cold and dry, it can take a really long time to melt a pot full of snow. So being able to get to the water that's frozen can be a lot faster. So all of those things are inside of this, as well as my layers, which I can show you in a minute. With the sled, again, taking care of the dogs is the important part. So every sled has what we call a drag pad, and that's a speed control. It's just a little pad with some points on the bottom, some little carbide points to help keep the speed down and keep the line tight with the dogs. We've got a brake, so if we need to stop, we can do that. And then we have a snow hook, which is kind of like an emergency brake that we put in and kick into the snow, so that if I need to go fix something with the dogs or take care of a dog or give a dog a rest, I can do that, and I can safely walk away from the sled and be able to make sure that the dogs are staying healthy, happy. If they've got a little snowball, sometimes dogs will get snowballs built up in their pads, and so we want to make sure that when they start having problems, I can take care of that. So that's what that is for. I also always carry ice screws, so if I want to stop and stay stopped, maybe we're going to stop for a lunch break and I don't want to have to worry about, I don't know, going to the bathroom real quickly while we're, I've got a potty break time. I don't really want the dogs taking off on me while I'm doing my potty break, so I can put an ice screw in and attach the sled and the teams to that so that I know they're going to stay put. And they'll be safe. Again, they'll be safe, and I'll be happy because I won't be chasing them down the lake, because they would be happy to leave without me.
Let's stop for a moment.
Yes, absolutely.
Yesterday when we were here, you pulled this sled out.
Oh, yeah.
And every dog here, all 51 of them, started barking and running around, because they wanted to be in the sled team. They love to run so much. So we're going to try to get one of the dogs out here, Pete.
Yes.
And see if we can show how he is harnessed up. I think that's going to be a lot of fun, but just be prepared that they all might decide this is something they want to do, even though it's very hot out here, and this is not something they would do in this
No,
heat.
not normally. I think that's why they're allowing us to mess with some things without being too excited, but we'll see if we can get, hey Pete. Come here, Petey. Come here. Come here, Pete. Come on. Here we go. Okay. Come here. Here we go.
Hello, Pete. Tell us about Pete.
Come here, Pete. Pete is 2 years old, and Pete has not done any racing, but he's done a lot of running here out of the yard, and so he's been training for the last year and a half with some of the other older dogs. I try to run some young dogs with older, more experienced dogs, so they kind of learn the route, and they learn manners. That's a big important thing for me, is having the dogs have good manners. They don't eat things they're not supposed to, like the lines. They don't chew on each other. They don't eat their harnesses. They they know their job and they have fun. And so Pete is 2 now, so this year he's hopefully going to go do some racing. And Pete runs often in the back of the pack because he's a big dog, and I've got a couple other big dogs who he runs really well with. And we've been working with Pete to also be a lead dog, because I like all of my dogs to be able to lead, because I've had situations where nobody wanted to lead, so I went through the whole team. So now it's just better to know that they've all done it at least once. Oh, let's leave the leaves around. So we're going to try and put a harness on Pete. So, do you want me to? So usually when I'm harnessing a dog, I don't want him to squirm away from me, so I usually kind of straddle him like this. And then it helps to know what the harness looks like once it's on. So we're going to, whoop, hey Pete. So we hold that over there. We're going to slide that right over his head. And just like putting on a pair of shoes, you want to make sure that everything is smoothed out nice. You don't want to put on a pair of shoes and have a warble in your socks. That's really uncomfortable. So we want to get the harness on. We want to make sure it's the right size, just like a pair of shoes. And then we want to make sure it's sitting really nice on the dog. So I'm pulling all of his neck fur out of here to make sure he doesn't have any little warbles, just like you pull a pair of socks on. And then get his feet in here. And we want to make sure not to do any weird tweaking with his legs. We want to keep everything nice and tight. And then we pull this on, and then make sure that all of the straps and everything is nice and smooth. There we go. And he's ready to pull. So then when we're hooking him up, these tug lines are going to clip to that back, and all the power is going to come from him driving forward. There you go. Nice job, Pete.
Good job, Pete. Everybody across the country is clapping for you right now.
good
They're so
boy.
excited. And all of your brothers and sisters are mad that you're getting to do this and they're not getting to do this.
That's
So
a good boy,
could
Pete.
we get Sarah and Rachel to hook him back up?
Yes, absolutely.
And then we'll talk more about the
Okay.
equipment that you
Yes.
use
Yep.
and wear.
Sure, absolutely.
Good job, Pete.
All right.
I think once we hook him back up, the dogs will
The dogs,
realize
they-
they're not being...
they will most of them will settle down. There's a little noise and a little excitement because it's that pick me, pick me. So even though it's really hot and they know we would not run in this kind of temperature, it's just too hard for them to maintain that coolness. We'll run sometimes when there's a lot of water out, or if it's raining, you can push the temperatures. This is a little. This
So
is
just like a
bit much.
kickball game, Pete was picked first.
Yes.
And everybody else wants to.
Everybody wants to be, they want to be part of the team. They want to pick me. So that's what all the barking is about. If I start handling harnesses, that's usually what happens. And I pulled out a few different harnesses because what I put on Pete is what's called an X-back. But again, like I said, a lot of the equipment goes back to historical use. And so designs and have not largely changed, but we do have some different styles. All of these are based on, historical harnesses, just different ways that fit different style or different types of dogs. So we do have a lot of different variability in that. That's what's called a Seppala harness. This is a more of a distance harness. It's a little shorter harness. It just is providing a different fit on the dog depending on the dog. I figure they'll quiet down while I do this. So there's a number of different styles, but they're all very similar idea of something to go around the dog's neck, something to go around the body to give them that ability to transfer that forward motion behind and into pulling the sled. So, the
Lots
clothing,
of different things.
okay.
Very fashion forward, I think, some
You
of this
know,
stuff.
I will say I have never been accused of being fashionable in my time. But again, I think comfortably cool. So in the winter time, I will often have on a pair of long johns and a pair of shorts over the top, just because I can stay nice and cool that way in a long john shirt. So I've got clothing to vent and to be able to move around and do things because I don't want to get sweaty.
Right.
So that's a really important thing. Go
I
ahead.
have another question
Sure.
for you. So for just a moment, Rachel and Sarah were the handlers. They took care of this
yes.
dog for you. So talk to us about when you're actually running a race.
Mhm.
They don't run the entire 300 miles without stopping.
Correct.
Talk through the idea of checkpoints and how these handlers would be used.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we do mostly what's called a continuous format race, which means we'll start in a certain point, and most of those races will go either from one point to the next point, or they'll go out and then come back. And during that course of that run, which could be 100 miles, it could be 300 miles, kind of like the Iditarod, only think of it in shorter chunks. We will go and we'll run for 30 to 50 miles usually. We will stop at a checkpoint, and for the safety of the dogs, every race like that has required checkpoints where you have to stop and you have to check in and make sure that the dogs are being taken care of. Some of those places have a required amount of time that you have to stop and rest. Again, thinking about the health of the dog, because the dogs are it. Races don't happen without dogs. There's no way I'm going to go out there and pull a sled and run. So we really need to be taking good care of our dogs. So when I get to a checkpoint at a race like that, most races that I do allow for handlers. I come into a checkpoint and I've got somebody there with food for the dogs and equipment for the dogs and probably some food for me, but their primary focus is not me, it's the dogs, because when we come into a checkpoint, we want the dogs to get off of their feet and eat and rest as much as they can, because in 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 hours, we're going to get up and we're going to go again. So those dogs really need to get as much rest and relaxation as they can in that time. So that means that those handler folks are taking care of the dogs. They're getting some food, some water, getting booties off, checking feet. Some dogs get massages. Everybody gets walked around before we go again, so everybody gets to get up and walk and do their business and take care of things. But they all come into the checkpoint. We got straw down for them. They get a coat. If it's daylight, we will often throw a little blanket on, helps keep them warm, keeps the sun off of them, so they can get a little dark spot to just take a little nap. So kind of like going into the shade. So that's really the job of the handlers, and then to make sure that I have what I need and I can get an hour maybe of sleep. But really, it's all about taking care of the dogs so that when we get to the next checkpoint, the dogs are still in good health, still happy, still raring to go, and that's the goal, and that's what we really
So
want.
a spa day, if you will.
It is
In fact, when you were talking
multiple
about
spa
this
days.
yesterday, Steve was thinking he might want to be a sled dog. He didn't get that kind of treatment at home, and he wanted that little spa day.
Well,
Now,
I do have a dog named Steve.
Yes, you do. I heard he was a little off, but that's
He's a good boy.
A good boy. There's also vets there, right?
Absolutely.
That are going to take care. So there are there are veterinarians that are working to make sure. And these things happen all over the world.
Yes, they do
Sled
happen
dog
all over the world. And an important thing to know is that every dog that races has a vet check before it ever races. Every dog we are required to provide proof of vaccinations, to prove that in our kennels we are taking care of those dogs and being responsible dog owners. Those dogs are all vet checked. They are touched by multiple vets and vet techs. It's a great place for vet techs to learn about taking care of dogs and good dog care from the veterinary standpoint. I love racing partly because there are so many vets, and the vet crews are always amazing folks, and they show up at the start of the race. They will pop out periodically on the trail to watch your dogs go by, to see how they actually look while they're running, to make sure that everything looks good on the trail. They are at every checkpoint. They are checking over those dogs. They're checking their heart rates and their respirations, making sure that there's not something odd going on, that nothing pops up during those races. And they're at the end of the race to watch. And if you've ever if I ever have a dog where I'm like, I'm not sure quite what's going on, I can talk to those vets and they will come and they will take care of that dog, and they'll give me the best information on how to make sure that my dog is safe and happy, because it's not just one race. I want the dog to be safe and happy and well cared for its entire life. And it's not worth risking my dog for one run where I could,
Absolutely.
something bad might happen. So I love having the vets there.
Yeah.
It's great. And every race provides those vets. So you've got folks who have, they've got no connection to any particular kennel. They are completely unbiased, and they are looking out for what's in the best interest of the dogs. And that's amazing.
So these sled dogs are amazing. They're strong and they're fast and their muscles are curled. So we're going to get ready to do our little chant right now. I'm going to ask you to put that on the thing. So kids, here comes our chant for today. We're going to ask that you, if your teacher allows you to go ahead and stand up and get a little space between you and your partners. Think about hand motions. We're going to have these guys here do motions and see who does it the best. But you're going to repeat after me as we get started with our chant. Sled dog, strong and fast.
Sled dog, strong and fast.
Muscles working, built to last.
Muscles working, built to last.
Thick warm coat keeps out cold.
Thick warm coat keeps out cold.
Padded paws with traction hold.
Padded paws with traction hold.
Teamwork pulling side by side.
Teamwork pulling side by side.
Hearts are strong and full of pride.
Hearts are strong and full of pride.
Through the forest, up the hill,
Through the forest, up the hill,
sled dogs run with strength and skill.
sled dogs run with strength and skill.
So now we're going to give you an opportunity to go ahead and have a seat here, and we're going to talk about our STEM challenge. One of the challenges here in the Boundary Waters in northern Minnesota and any place where it's just going to be very, very cold is the freezing of the water. So sucking on ice is good, but you really need thawed ice to make sure that the dogs are hydrated, to make sure that you are hydrated. So your challenge is to create a type of thermal insulation for dog bowls, and also to help the mushers out a little bit, so you can put snow in there or ice, and then it becomes warmer or cooler, but melted so that they can actually use it to their ability, so their bodies become strong. We want you to share these ideas with the Friends of the Boundary Water and also the Doodle Dog Kennel. Who knows? You may be someone that they call on in future years to provide equipment for big dog races like here, the Bear Grease, or in Alaska, the Iditarod. So make sure you share those with us. We can't wait to see them. Ladies, I have a feeling we have a lot of questions, and we're not going to get to all of them, but I'm going to now turn it over to our moderators and see if we have any questions in the chat.
So one thing that Miss Cade's class noticed was how important it was to keep these dogs safe. So Musher Mary Manning, thank you so much for all you've done keeping our dogs safe. And Miss Cade's class question was, if you were to go camping with your own personal dog, do you have any tips on how to keep a dog safe while out camping? And what would you do if they were to get off the leash, or if you were to run into a wild animal?
Okay, great question. Mary,
Okay.
you want to take that?
Sure. I think for taking a personal dog, again, think about what do they need. They need to be able to stay warm. So wherever they're going to, if you're going to be out overnight, make sure that you're providing them with what they need. Now, it is largely going to depend on what the dog breed is. You know, a dog, an Alaskan sled dog who's got that good undercoat and that good guard coat, they probably are not going to need as much extra equipment to stay warm, but also if it's your personal dog, if you're staying overnight, your personal dog's probably going to want to cuddle up in your sleeping bag with you. So providing a space for that dog to be nice and warm and happy inside your shelter. But if you're just going out for a day trip, think about what are you going to be traveling on? Is it going to be hard on the feet? Do you need to be watching for that? If it's a dog that's kind of a light-coated dog, having some kind of a jacket for them is actually, well, some of them are kind of goofy and funny looking. If it serves the purpose and that really helps your dog be able to go out and travel with you, that's a great thing to have. Booties are a great thing to have if your dog has sensitive feet, or if it's very furry feet. Very furried feet can often pick up a lot of snow and a lot of ice balls, and it can make it really uncomfortable for the dog. But if you put a bootie on that dog, you can really alleviate some of that and be able to travel with that dog and keep it comfortable. And thinking about having some water available for that dog and frequently throughout the course of the day, not just in the beginning and the end of whatever you're doing. Just like you would carry a water bottle and drink periodically throughout the day, your dog's going to need that same thing. So a collapsible dish to be able to provide that for your dog, because they'll eat some snow, but again, you really need to provide them actual water. And making sure that you're providing them enough food too, because if you're traveling, they're probably burning more calories than they normally do laying around the couch. So providing some fast action, high fat snacks for them throughout the course of the day, just like for any wilderness travel. You don't just eat one big meal at the end of the day. I always carry all kinds of pocket snacks so that during the course of the day I'm constantly snacking on different things and constantly keeping my energy up. Your dog's going to be exactly the same way.
Yeah, a lot of things to think about. Think about how when you go out on a trip and your parents sort of take care of you, or if you have a baby brother or a baby sister, bring in all the supplies. Great answer, great question. Do we have another one?
We do. This one is, I guess for Mushroom Mary again. We're assuming that all of your dogs have names. How are they chosen? And do you have like a special story of, or a cute story of how one of your dogs got their name?
Every dog does have a name. They all have a name. They're all unique individuals, so they all have their own, for lack of a better word, personalities. They are all very unique and they have their own quirks. Most mushers pick a theme. When they have a litter of puppies, they pick a theme and then they try to come up with names based around that theme. For example, my last group of dogs, they were born in the dirt. Mom had access to a dog house and she decided that it was summertime and she just had the puppies in the dirt, and the musher would put the puppies back in the little dog house for them. And the little puppies would all crawl out and they were much happier laying around in the dirt than they were laying in the nice, house with straw and very cushy. They wanted to be laying in the dirt. So when we decided to name them, we thought, well, they're the dirt dogs. So their names are based on different, terrain sort of based. We were trying to come up with things that were cute as well and weren't too, hadn't been used before. So I have a dog named Pete and a dog named Duff and a dog named Pebbles. So that litter came from that sort. And that's typical for mushers. We usually pick something. Sometimes it gets a little difficult to come up with a new name, but most of my dogs have come to me with names already because I get most of my dogs from other mushers. So typically I get dogs from other folks and they've named them.
I got a theme for you in the future, Mary.
Okay.
Breakfast foods.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Hash brown,
Oh, I
burrito.
like that.
Scrambled.
Okay, and the strangest one I heard is there's a fella who named them after, you see the K-Tel, the things as advertised on TV.
Oh, yeah.
All of the different little
No.
odd, yeah, so he's got a whole litter. They're like,
That's
do you have a
good.
dog named Floby? He does. No Thigh Master, but Floby. I'm like, okay, that's pretty
Nice.
cute.
ShamWow.
Great
Yeah,
question.
exactly.
Great question. Do we have any more?
We've got a couple more, I think 2 more. A question that was asked was, what is the average or maybe not average, what is the highest temperature ever recorded in Boundary Waters? And what is the coldest it has ever been in the Boundary Waters?
So I will say today is the hottest it's ever been in the Boundary Waters because I am really sweating, but I will throw that to one of my folks. What is the hottest temperature it's ever been here in the Boundary Waters, and what is the lowest?
I don't know if I know.
I don't know the hottest, but it definitely, in the summertime, yeah, we see 80s pretty often in the summertime. And again, like we've been saying, the temperature has shifted over the years, so we're seeing warmer days. In the wintertime, we have to think about the ambient temperature and the wind chill. But we've had some of the coldest recorded ambient temperatures in the United States have actually been recorded in a place called Embarrass, so kind of right close to the Boundary Waters, and some of that was like negative 50 degrees Fahrenheit, so really cold.
So some of you have watched us do some live streams from Voyageurs National Park, and we've had some really cold days where it was 0 degrees or 5 degrees, and then we had one year where it was 32 degrees, so the ice wasn't melting. But last year we were -8, and that wasn't even with the wind chill. So I think it does change, and as we think about climate change and warming climates and rising sea levels, things get hotter longer, and which is not always great for the environment. Let's do our one last question.
One last question. You mentioned the importance of having water and food for the dogs, especially when you're out on the trail and you're in races. Can you tell us exactly, like give us an example of what kinds of food you would prepare and how you go about feeding that many dogs?
Sure. So every day I buy blocks of generally beef. So I buy a 50-pound block of beef. It's all coarse ground beef. It's special for dogs. It's not something that I would eat or that I would prepare for somebody because it's packaged specially for sled dogs and dogs. And then that I cut up into pieces, so then they'll get a chunk of meat. I take a 5-gallon bucket and put anywhere between 5 and about 10 pounds of meat in that bucket, thaw that out, add some water to it, and then I take a scoop of kibble. So about, probably 6 cups. So 6 8-ounce cups of kibble goes into every bucket, and then basically take a big rake, mush it up good, and then I have what's called a dipper or a ladle, and I go through, and every dog gets makes like a soup, and so every dog gets some soup. So that's every night they get that in the mornings. It's a little less kibble, but about the same amount of meat, so before they get out and run. So that way I kind of distribute the calories over the course of the day. Dogs who are a little thinner, Pete's got he's a young male and he's a little skinnier, so he'll get a little supplement. So I will often get 50-pound blocks of beaver meat or turkey meat, and I cut that into basically like little Snicker bar snack sizes. And those skinny dogs will get a little extra snack just to help put a little extra calories into them. When it's really cold, we have some chicken fat that comes in a 5-gallon bucket, and it looks kind of like you would scrape off the top of a pan when you're roasting a chicken. So we put that in and we give that to the dogs. Sometimes I'll make little they look like little meatballs with a little melon baller, and they'll get supplemental fat that way. They really love those little balls of chicken fat. They just suck that right down, and they're just super happy to have that. So that's the typical meal. And if we're traveling, it's a very similar thing, whether we're traveling for races or we're traveling in the Boundary Waters. You always want to make sure you've got an adequate food supply and a lot of snacks, because sometimes the dogs get a little fussy. It's kind of like people. They're like, oh, I don't really feel like peanut butter and jelly today. I want something different. And so sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of option for them. So whether it's turkey or some fish, to be able to give them something with a higher water content on a warm day, it's nice to have that extra water coming to them in the food.
Well, I hope you're hungry now. So for those of you that haven't had your lunch, I hope you're getting an appetite up. Mary, it's been a pleasure to work with you, to see you, to meet all of your animals. And before we go, we'll let them all say goodbye. But I wanted to come back over here to Sarah and Rachel. Now, you guys also work with dogs, and you have some adopted sled dogs, not professional mushers like Mary over here. What's your favorite thing about working with sled dogs and traveling in the winter here in the Boundary Waters?
Yeah, I mean, the sled dogs just love to run. And actually, my favorite thing to do with sled dogs is not on a sled, but something called skijoring, when you're cross-country skiing and you put the dog in the harness and then use kind of a shorter version of the gang line that we showed you. And then you can go with the dog, and the dog will pull you. You have to do some work yourself, but it is so fun, and it's just a one-on-one opportunity for you and the dogs. And both my dogs at home are retired sled dogs, so they really love to do that.
Nice. What about you, Rachel?
Yeah, I mean, my first pet dog was also a retired sled dog that I'd spent about 100 nights winter camping with in the Boundary Waters. So when we brought Mia home, it was like the most special thing to give her the life of luxury at the end of her life. But I think what Mary was saying about going out and being with this whole team, it feels like you've got a whole other like crew of personalities that you get to be around. And that, I think, is just the teamwork and connection you get to build with dogs and people out in the Boundary Waters. There's literally nothing else like it.
And you mentioned teamwork, and that's something we're always trying to instill in our students, that being able to collaborate, being able to disagree but still like each other, being able to have teamwork is very important in our time. And we want our students to grow up to be good humans, and we want to take care of our animals too. This has been an incredible 2-week journey. We have behind the scenes, I've been traveling with Steve and Dave, our Expeditions and Education team. We've been living out of an RV. I have cooked more than I've ever cooked in my life, and I don't like that, so we need to fix that for later. But we've just enjoyed working with the Friends of the Boundary Waters. We love their mission to protect and to elevate this place and to teach. You guys are specifically educators with the Friends of the Boundary Waters. What is your mission? For one last time, tell us a little bit about what we want to make sure students know.
Yeah, so at the Friends of the Boundary Waters, a big part of our mission is protecting the Boundary Waters and connecting people to it. And we like to break it down into 3 pillars: wilderness, people, and community. And in wilderness, we've been talking about leave no trace, how to take care of this environment and keep it for future generations. We also want to call out a threat to the Boundary Waters is copper sulfide mining, and we're going to put up the link to our website if students are interested in learning more about how they can help us with that threat to the Boundary Waters. And through our other pillars of people, as we mentioned, we like to connect people to this space. Our education team, we send students in the Boundary Waters. This 2-week live stream has been a way to connect folks with the Boundary Waters. And in our community pillar, it's working with all these amazing partners that you've seen throughout all of our live streams.
At last glance, we had about 12,000 students signed up for this event here. So that's 12,000 more students that are going to learn to love this place and then want you to protect it. But students, we want you to think about what we're learning here and then how you can protect places around where you live, because being a good steward means that you take care of things. You practice leave no trace. You practice being a good human. You practice having conversations that sometimes are hard, and we want to protect these beautiful public lands that we have around us. So, on the behalf of Expeditions in Education, the Doodle Dog Kennel, and our amazing partner, Friends of the Boundary Water, we want to leave you with a send-off from our dogs, and we're going to try to get them to sing, and we're going to move out of the way. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little wave goodbye, but let's see if we can get these dogs excited. Uh-oh. Come on, Gayla. They're going to say something.
Woo!
But don't forget to keep watching Paddles and Pines,
Frenchie.
watch them again and again, and register for the group, the Friends of the Boundary Waters, to get on their resource list. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend, and we will see you soon with Expeditions in Education. Bye, everyone.